So it's been just under a week since my podcast with Joe Rogan dropped, and it's been quite the week. I did want to come on here, though, and say a few things. My time with Rogan was amazing, but both myself and others have caught some things I said that weren't correct. And so, in light of that, I'm going to be making a response video to myself. I think it's the 10th article of the Mormon Church is that they believe the Bible insofar as it is translated. It's not the 10th, Wes. You lied. It's the 8th article of the Mormon Church that says that.
It's false.
Egypt is like Greece in that you have, like, you can go to the Pantheon and you see that kind of stuff, right?
Pure fiction.
The Pantheon? Are you kidding me? The Pantheon is in Rome. Do you mean the Parthenon?
We made this one up.
Well, Paul says that 400 people saw him all at once. I'm pretty sure that's 500. Paul says that Jesus appeared to the disciples, and then he appeared to 400 people all at once. You said it wrong again?
It's a made-up tale.
Ignatius of Antioch, arguing that there are only 4 Gospels. He's in the 2nd century.
It's a total fabrication.
Ignatius? I think you meant Irenaeus. Listen, Wes, even Rogan catches you in your own mistakes. Actually, the oils in your hands are more abrasive than latex or even cloth. So
the oils are more abrasive?
No, sorry, I said that wrong. They're less abrasive.
Okay. You are fake news.
Now, obviously, I'm being a little bit self-deprecating. These are slips, ones that in a 3-hour plus, no topics outlined beforehand, no notes, non-linear conversation happen. And so I hope that you can give me a break for these obvious and clear missteps. There is, however, a criticism I'm seeing online that I think does require some attention and correction on my part. At around the 40-minute mark, Joe asked me a question about the Great Isaiah Scroll. And when he asks me how close it is to the modern Hebrew copies of Isaiah, I say that it is word for word identical to the later Masoretic text. This was admittedly a hyperbolic statement that I should have been much more careful on. My area of expertise when it comes to manuscripts is almost exclusively New Testament, although I do have some work with a handful of 1st century Greek fragments on the Dead Sea Scrolls for comparative work, and I note in my doctoral dissertation instances of parashot, division markers in the Hebrew text of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So, up front, I am not, nor do I claim to be, a Dead Sea Scrolls expert, but let me tell you why I said what I said. What was going on in the back of my mind was a quote that I was recalling from Old Testament scholar Gleason Archer's A Survey of the Old Testament, where he talks about the copies of Isaiah found in Qumran Cave 1 in 1947, that they were 1,000 years earlier than the oldest dated manuscripts previously known, proving to be word for word identical with our standard Hebrew Bible, and more than 95% identical to the Masoretic text, specifically the Leningrad Codex, calling it almost letter for letter with that manuscript. Also, I had only a few months previously to this discussion with Rogan, read Old Testament textual critic Emmanuel Tove's Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible, where he breaks down the variants of 1Q Isaiah B and compares them to the Leningrad Codex, describing the differences with the word minutia. Granted, both Archer and Tove are talking about 1Q Isaiah B, and my statement to Rogan was specifically in context to 1Q Isaiah A, but that is what was going through my mind when I had the conversation. At the same time, I have actually been in contact with a number of Old Testament scholars, even ones who specialize in 1Q Isaiah A itself, who have assured me that although there is disagreement across the scholarly spectrum, the statements are equally applied across both documents. However, what I should have said to Rogan is what I said to Billy Carson when he brought up his statement about Codex Sinaiticus, that Sinaiticus is nearly identical to modern Greek critical texts that we use to produce translations today. Rogan's reaction to the correction of wording should be exactly the same. It is a wow moment. And please hear me out here. I do not think there aren't textual variants in the Isaiah Dead Sea Scroll texts. I don't. In fact, later on in my conversation with Rogan, I specifically say ancient Hebrew doesn't have a vowel system in its writing that's overly comprehensive. And so in the Middle Ages, when you have these groups of Jews who are copying these Hebrew scriptures, who aren't speaking it as much as they're reading it, you got to figure out how to pronounce it as, because vowels make a difference. But if you took all the vowels out of English, if you were a natural English reader, you could probably figure out what was what if you're looking at the page. And so in the Middle Ages, the Masoretic scribes come up with these vowel pointing systems. And that's what you see when you look at a Hebrew Bible today, is you see these vowels. What I'm pointing out there is that there is an entire vowel system with the manuscripts of the later medieval text that are completely absent from the ancient Hebrew copies that we have, like that of the Dead Sea Scrolls. That means that there are going to be variants that are counted and included that have to do with vowels absent from ancient manuscripts that are present in medieval ones. I'm not saying that those are all of them or even most of them, but that even that statement to Rogan is a tacit admission that there are, of course, differences. The same thing goes for Codex Sinaiticus. There are multiple textual variants between Sinaiticus and the medieval copies, and then the modern critical text we use to make English translations today. However, the vast majority of these are almost completely inconsequential, have no bearing on when we translate them into English, and don't impact any essential Christian doctrine that could not be derived from other texts absent of textual complexity throughout the manuscript traditions. If Rogan had done what I did to Billy and asked, "Do you mind if I ask a clarifying question?" and pressed me on what I meant by word for word, I would have actually outlined the fact that no two handwritten documents ever match exactly, but that the overwhelming agreement between the Isaiah scroll and the later Masoretic text is shocking, despite orthographic and minor scribal differences. So, to summarize, was my hyperbolic statement to Rogan a dishonest attempt to pull the wool over Rogan and his audience's eyes? No. Was I participating in disingenuous and underhanded apologetic tactics to try and gain points at the expense of truth? No. Should I have been more careful in my statement on Rogan about the Great Isaiah Scroll and used much more precise language, something to the effect of nearly identical rather than word for word identical, in order to not bring unnecessary and unfortunate scrutiny upon my discussion with him? Yes, but I hope you can see why I said what I said, and forgive me for my lack of precision. Discussing the intricacies of textual criticism to a general audience is not always easy, and in the course of a 3-hour podcast, conversational style, pulled off the top of my head on this big platform, I was not nearly as accurate as I should or could have been in this instance. A number of people, friends, colleagues, and content creators, some of which are actual Dead Sea Scroll scholars themselves, have reached out to me to point out this mistake and lack of precision, and I appreciate it. Even the ones who are ascribing dishonest and nefarious intentions to me. We can only get better by correction. We do all need to be careful with our words. I am far from infallible. I'm going to make mistakes and misspeak. I'm going to do it again. Do not hold me to a standard of perfection, because I am not going to live up to that. I will fail that standard. The only person who you should assume perfection of is Jesus. And I, Wes Huff, am probably the farthest thing from Jesus in pretty much every way you can think of.